Hey guys, how you doing? It's Tom. I was walking along here and I was just wondering which historical figures understood the magnitude of the moment that they were in when they were in it. You know, there's so many moments throughout history that change history. The dropping of the bomb on Hiroshima, Martin Luther King's I Had a Dream speech. When he gave that speech, did he know that that would echo through eternity? That we'd still be listening to that speech 50, 60 years later? I don't know. It's hard to tell. And it makes you think, would we recognize these moments if we were in them, or would we be blind to it? Would we let these moments pass us by? Well, 2 weeks ago, week and a half ago, whatever it was, the James Damore Google diversity memo became public news, and James Damore was fired for releasing a memo which talked about diversity in the workplace, and he used a lot of scientific-backed information on the differences between men and women. Not necessarily damning information, just that men and women are, in fact, different. And he explicitly stated in the memo that he didn't think women were any less capable of men of doing things. I mean, basically, he stated that progressive ideology dictates that anytime there is a difference in outcome, so a difference in results, that must be due to misogyny, or that must be due to oppressors oppressing the oppressed. And this is kind of that postmodernism mindset that everything is oppressor and victim, and that's how they divide the country. So this set off a firestorm, and James Damore got fired. We're going to cross the street. James Damore got fired, and it led off great public debate. And this isn't all that we've seen from Google in terms of censorship. This year, the big story has been the demonetization of YouTube videos. We've seen Diamond and Silk, or two African-American female Trump supporters. I mean, they've been demonetized simply because they're African-American female Trump supporters. And, of course, where are all the people calling for equal rights? No, because they don't want the public to see that people like Diamond and Silk exist. So YouTube or Google, it's all the same, censors their or demonetizes their page. Sorry, there's a plane going over. All these planes. So anyway, and of course there's more controversial videos that they demonetize: Paul Joseph Watson, Stephen Molyneux, and then there's people like Dave Rubin, who simply interview people from all different political backgrounds and plays the devil's advocate. I mean, what's controversial about interviewing people from different backgrounds, no matter what they say, playing the devil's advocate? It's called being a good journalist. It's doing a good interview. I hope I could do interviews the way he does. And now we heard last week that YouTube is putting the ADL, the American Defamation League, the same American Defamation League that decided Pepe the Frog is racist, in charge of determining what content is controversial. And then based on that, they are going to put YouTube videos that are deemed controversial into a kind of a phantom zone where, yeah, you could upload the videos to YouTube, but people can't like them, people can't comment on them, people can't share them. It's censorship. You know, George Orwell said, "He who controls the present controls the past, and he who controls the past controls the future." And my life experience has shown me that, as per many things that George Orwell said, he was right about this. So let's take my own life experience, because I came up like anyone else, typical upbringing, went to college, did everything like I was supposed to, graduated school with a bachelor's degree in adolescent history education, so history major. And I thought I was pretty knowledgeable on history. I said, okay, I read the books they wanted me to read, I studied what they wanted me to study, and now I know history. And it wasn't until after I got out of college that, just by chance, I started coming across some people on the internet that were saying these wild things about the American government, and that things the government has done in the past, false flag operations to start wars, and that these wars would be sold to the public as defensive wars, but they were actually aggressive wars. And at first I laughed. I was like, these people don't know what they're talking about. But I was curious, and I was a historian. So I said, all right, I'll start digging into this stuff. And piece by piece, I started digging and finding out that these crazy things that people were saying on the internet, that people had these platforms like Stefan Molyneux, these crazy things they were saying were true. And I'd look them up one by one. I say, wow. And I would have never, ever, ever came across this information. Even being an historian, I would have taught establishment history to whoever I was speaking to, because that's what I was taught in college. Went a different route after college, but that's what I would have taught. And learning this alternative history, true history, from coming across people on the internet is a great lesson, because now we have Google, which essentially has become the internet. YouTube, Google. I mean, Google owns YouTube. It shows how it's a monopoly. And they're talking about censoring controversial content. But of course, Google, Eric Schmidt, he was in the bag for Hillary Clinton. These people are the political establishment. These people, they attend the Bilderberg Conference, they attend the Council on Foreign Relations. The corporations buy the government, they buy the Republicans and the Democrats. If you know your history, your alternative history that I wouldn't know if I didn't have the internet, you would know that the Rockefeller Foundation used tremendous influence through the use of grants. He set up the American Historical Association, all to promote corporate government history as establishment history. And without the internet, we wouldn't know these things. So now YouTube, Google is talking about censoring controversial videos, which is really anyone who's talking about the things I'm talking to you about now. Anyone who's trying to expose historical information that has been suppressed by the political establishment. Now, of course, they never roll it out for what they say it is. So what they say is that this is to stop hate speech, or this is to stop people from being offended. We don't want people to be offended. And I mean, of course, even that is an argument completely lacking, because if you're going to have a free society and freedom of speech, then people shouldn't worry about being offended. People should be worried about developing intellectual self-defense so that if they are offended, they can attack other people's arguments. But so they roll out these censorship programs and they say, oh yeah, this is to stop people from being offended. This is to stop this terrible, terrible hate speech. And in reality, what they're doing, it's the political establishment, which we're all against, no matter what side of the political spectrum you're on. If you're left, right, you might want them to silence your political opponents because you think that these people you've been convinced that they're hateful or whatever it might be. But what you're really doing is you're giving the political establishment the consent of the people that they need to pull off censorship against the masses. And the censorship, what it's doing, it's stopping these historical truths from being exposed. And without understanding these historical truths, then we can't understand how the government is operating now, and we won't understand what the government is doing in the future. And this is why George Orwell said, he who controls the present controls the past, and he who controls the past controls the future. And this was demonstrated very well in his book in 1984. This may be one of those crossroads. Look how the internet, what I just explained to you, the internet enabled my awakening, and I was a historian to all of these historical truths that have been completely suppressed by the modern American education system. And it's been suppressed by design. If you look up the Reese Committee and Norman Dodd, they found that the Rockefeller Foundation, the Carnegie Foundation, and these tax-exempt foundations, as dating back to, I think, 1907, right around then, early 1900s, they had formulated a plan to hijack the American education system. So without the internet, I would have never had this awakening. And then I couldn't push this awakening forward to other people. I wouldn't have a platform to educate people on these historical injustices. This very well could be a turning point in humanity, because the last 15 years with the internet has been like the Wild West. It's been a human renaissance. People are exposing crimes of the government left and right. I mean, every other day you see news that, or quote unquote, news by the corporate mainstream media that the alternative media quickly and easily demonstrates are lies. And we have taken away their monopoly on information, and information is the ultimate power. That's what George Orwell understood. And this could be one of those crossroads, but we have to stop fighting each other. We have to stop saying, well, I don't like your politics, and they're a private company, and I'm glad they shut you down. Well, if they shut me down, they could shut you down. And who do you think they are? They're the very government that has been oppressing all of us. We have to unite together against this corporate government. And it's either going to happen now or it's not going to happen. And on August 19th, there is a march against Google. A nationwide march. Now, ironically, a lot of this march against Google has already been canceled because they were worried about violence. So, cheers to the people for censoring ourselves. We need to march against Google. We need to stand up against the corporate government and use our free speech while we still have it. That we will not permit censorship. I don't care if I agree with your political ideology. I don't even care if you're a hateful person spewing hate against me. I just want you to be able to say it, because I understand that if you can say what you want to say, then I can say what I want to say, and the better ideas will win in the end. We need to stop combating each other by shutting down free speech. We need to combat each other intellectually. We need to argue ideas, and in the end, let the best idea win. And if your idea is so good, if you have such a great understanding of the world, then what are you afraid of? We need to get out of these political boxes, and it's time to stand up against Google. So I hope on August 19th, this weekend, I hope you march against Google. And if you do march against Google, great. If you don't march against Google, well, people are going to be posting videos of this march all over the internet. Get on social media, let people know this is happening, and share these videos. And you could spread information that could put pressure on Google to stop censoring the people, because once we lose this speech, it's not coming back. This is a crossroads in history. We've had such a small window where we've broken the monopoly on the corporate mainstream media's control of information, the government, the media, which is the government's control on information. I know you guys can't see me that well, but who cares? You don't need to see me, you can hear me. So we need to fight back now. And the only other thing I'll say is they've already canceled some of these rallies because of threats of violence, right? That means if you go to these rallies, there's a good chance there is going to be violence. And that's okay. If there's violence, you need to learn from history the same way I'm telling you these other historical things that I've been able to learn from. If you look at Gandhi, if you look at Martin Luther King Jr., they both got what they wanted, and they did that because they understood the nature of the beast. So if you're at one of these rallies and you get hit, you need to practice civil disobedience. You need to turn the other cheek and not hit back, and I know that goes against human nature. That doesn't make you weak, it makes you strong, because as the American people see that you are protesting peacefully, that you get hit and you don't strike back, but you continue to exercise your right of assembly, your right of speech, it becomes clear, it becomes evident who is in the right. So you need to turn the other cheek. And if you do that, in the end, you will win the ideological war for liberty, for all people, for freedom, for all people, against this oppressive government. We need to come together as a people. We need to understand, because if we do these things, we could keep exposing false flag operations by our government. We could keep exposing corruption in our government. We could expose when the government sends our soldiers to die for personal gain. We could expose when corporations who are in bed with the government poison the masses and give people cancer and do everything they can to cover it up. But the only way we're going to do that is if we keep free speech, and if we keep quibbling amongst each other because we think we have some moral high ground so we can shut down someone else's speech. In the end, you're going to find that it's your speech that's gone. In the end, you're going to find that you're the one who is oppressed. And in the end, you're going to look back and say, how didn't I recognize that crossroad in history? How did I miss that moment? I'm Tom Anderson, and I'm not missing that moment.